happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we got another Mountain Goats reaction, this time to the album The Life of the World to Come, brought to us by friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out that Patreon link below or the Patreon link on the end screen. We could not do it without them. All right, let's jump into this a little bit. Caitlin says, I got really into Tallahassee and the Sunset Tree back in the day. I have both of those up, so check for those when this is over with. And there are a few other recent albums I've heard that I really like as well. For my next request, I think I'm going to do something a little different and request this album, which I actually also have not listened to in full. I've heard a couple of songs of which I really like. It's their 12th studio album released October 6, 2009. Peaked at 110 on the Billboard Top 200 albums on its debut. The album's title comes from a line of the Nicene Creed. Metacritic 78 out of 100. Robert Christgau, who's one of the toughest critics, probably the toughest critic of the last 40 years, gave it an A-. And Pitchfork, 8.4 out of 10, named it the 45th best album of the year. John Darnell, the leader of the Mountain Goats, he is the Mountain Goats basically, wrote on his website that this record is about 12 hard lessons that the Bible taught him. Pitchfork did a little interview with him, and I'd like to share. They said, you named all the songs after actual Bible verses. How much time did you spend with an actual Bible, going through it, looking for verses that tied in directly with what you were already writing about? John said, it went both ways. Sometimes I would write a song and I would think, well, let me read for a while and see if I come across something. I know the Bible pretty well. I'm not one of those guys who can immediately start quoting every book, but usually I know where to look to find certain themes. With a song like Psalms 42, I had been looking through the Psalms. The Psalms are so awesome. I saw the line, he has raised me from the pit, and I like the sound of that. Started messing around with the guitar, started ad-libbing a little story for the first verse, and then when I got to the chorus part, sang the lines direct from the Psalms, more or less. So it varied. I always think if you have a scheme that says, okay, I'll read the verse and then go and write the song, or the other way around, it's not going to work out. I was looking at the Bible the whole time I was writing. So that was an early experience of what these people were like to me, this combination of stern and loving. So John's parents got divorced when he was young, and he says, and he was like going to church all the time at the time, but he says, after the divorce, my stepfather was an atheist, and I became one too. If you're a young man living with a father figure, you tend to pick up his beliefs. So I was a rampaging atheist when I was in high school. I ran around telling people they were stupid if they believed in God, and on and on and on. And it was that way until late high school when I probably entered that horrible, limp-sounding realm of agnosticism, where for me it was, I'd love to be a believer, I'd love to be a fanatic. To me, that looks awesome to have that certainty of belief in anything, not just religiously, but politically. Good luck with that. Anything you could actually say, this is exactly what I believe, and it was all written down by somebody else, and I accept every last word of it. So the music will not be in the video, but it'll be at a Vimeo link below. So click on that if you want to watch the full reaction with the music, which is what I always recommend. So a little background. I used to be a pastor. I'm a strong Christian. I haven't gone to church in 4.5 years because where I happen to live, this is an area where it's all mega churches and it's a battle for who has the biggest building, the most people. Because I know what it's like behind the scenes, it's hard for me to go to these churches. There's a lot of great churches in America where I live, but I just haven't been able to find one where I am. So I listen to messages every time. I read the Bible. I'm as strong a Christian as I've ever been, but the commercialism of it in the Western world, it has just been so twisted up, and the way it's been used politically is insane. So I'll have some thoughts on these songs, but just want to let you know where I'm coming from up front. So let's jump into the first song. You see it below. It's 1 Samuel 15:23. And I'm going to tell you what every one of these verses is, and then I'll tell you about the song. This verse is, for rebellion is the sin of divination, and presumption is as inequity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he also rejected you from being king. On WFMU's 7-second delay, John said that the track is about the struggle of being a non-Christian in a very Christian-oriented world. John said it's about trying to make your way with a different sort of belief system in a world. The guy interrupts him, yeah, kind of like Ravi Shankar. John said, kind of like Ravi Shankar, yes. It's trying to make your way in a world that's kind of been overrun by Christians and mega churches. All right, I'm going to have the lyrics up as always, important on this one. Thanks again, Caitlin. All right, 1 Samuel 15:23. This guy's a cult leader, basically, is what he's telling us through these people have nowhere else to go. He's trying to, and I mean, I won't get into the whole complicated, but there's pastors of Christian churches that are just cult leaders, right? That's a whole nother story. But this guy is kind of sounding spiritual, right? That's how you bring him in. You sound pretty much right, but there's some stuff that's off. I thought one of the things, John Worster on the drum, right? On that percussion, he's not in there much, but it gives this song that ominous sound, right? The acoustic and John, and but whenever that drum comes in, that percussion, it really, really sets this song off, and you're like, oh man, this is ominous. You know that he's up to no good. So good way to start it. Next up, we have Psalms 40, verse 2, which says, he drew me up from the pit of destruction, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. So maybe this one will be a little more on the positive side. All right, Psalms 40, verse 2. This song is really about kind of the doctrine of redemption, of basically they're doing whatever they want, but they believe that God will bring them back to him, like we can do whatever we want. Kind of a free grace is another thing you can call it. I don't want to get into all the theological stuff, but it's interesting. The song's totally different arrangement-wise, right, than the first song. Although a lot of the same, not necessarily themes, but kind of evils being done, but they are acknowledging God. And there's a ton of Bible verses, and both directly and indirectly. And he talked about it in that interview that I was given with Pitchfork, but in this song, and I won't go into all of that, but I thought it was really good. And I thought it was really interesting. A lot of the Mountain Goats, by albums, John gets thematic, not just on content, but on arrangement. But you already have a vast different arrangement so far. And that might not last, but this song is definitely different than the first. Next up, we have Genesis 3:23, which says, therefore the Lord God sent him out from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he was taken. So it's Adam, and Adam is just fallen, right? In a 2013 interview, John talked about visiting his father's old house in San Luis Obispo, mentioned in the first verse of Dance Music from 2005, the Sunset Tree, which I told you I have a reaction of courtesy to Caitlin, describing it as a mind-bending experience that made him question his childhood perceptions. In that incident, he said the new renters were home and allowed him to come inside. In a 2009 Pitchfork interview, he said the song was inspired by a habit compulsion. He has to drive or walk past places he used to live, especially in his youth. He references a specific building in Portland where he almost died, which he sort of broke into. So some interesting allusions here. Let's see where he takes it. All right, Genesis 3:23. Now, he said in the one interview in 2013 that people let him in, but it sounds like he broke into the house in 2009. So who knows? But, relating it to Genesis 3:23, I think he's kind of pushed out of his house and comes back in, but it doesn't seem to have the same redemption maybe that Adam, at least Adam's people eventually got, not Adam himself, so to speak. But interesting revisiting a place where you had a lot of trauma, right? A lot of nostalgia, and that's kind of what he's going through. In one way, he can separate himself. In another way, you just start picturing, and I don't know what it'd be like. I lived in a lot of places when I was young, but I didn't have a great childhood either. I don't know if I'd want to revisit those places or not. That would be an interesting thing, but a different tone too, a softer tone, like a catchier tone to this song, even though it's a difficult song, right? And I get it. Revisiting difficult memories can sometimes be cathartic and sometimes can be devastating. So good song. We're coming up to our first New Testament verse on here. There's 12 songs on here, and 8 of them are based on Old Testament scriptures. But we got Philippians 3:20 through 21. We're told this, but our citizenship is in heaven, and from it we await a Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, who will transform our lowly body to be like his glorious body by the power that enables him to subject all things to himself. So basically, in this chapter, Philippians, Paul is telling us that, look, we're aliens here on earth. Your real peace is going to come when you go to heaven. That's basically what he's telling us. In that 2009 interview with Pitchfork, John writes that this song is about, quote, the sorts of hard questions that come up when somebody kills himself. In another 2009 interview with Punk News, he said the song is specifically inspired by David Foster Wallace, whose final place of residence was in Claremont, California, Darnell's hometown. All right, tough stuff here. All right, Philippians 3:20 and 21. There really is such diversity. It's kind of tripping me up here on all these arrangements. It's not like John. So this one has more of almost a happy sound to it, even though it's not about a happy subject, right? So he's kind of tackling the fact that this guy kills himself, right? In the chorus, and nice people said he's with God now, safe in his arms. So a lot of times people don't know what to say, so they say that. And I get it. They're just trying to comfort you. But sometimes, I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to hear that or not. I guess I'd want to hear that. I don't know. But the voice of the angels that he heard on his last days with us, smoke alarms. In other words, God hadn't called him home, right? He wasn't hearing God that he should kill himself. Nowhere in the Bible does God ever tell you should kill yourself. He was hearing something else, smoke alarms, right? Other noise. And that's why he did it. But, he's not degrading the guy. Suicide is an epidemic in in the country I live in, at least in the United States, and it's tragic. I mean, it's just unbelievably tragic. But I get it, right? I mean, you get to a dark place, and everyone thinks. I'm sure that the person that I used to tell people this when I was pastoring in men's groups and stuff. The guy who kills himself tomorrow didn't think 2 years ago, you know what? I'm probably going to take my life in a couple years. Like, that's not on the forefront, but we get into spaces, right? And that's what happened to this guy that he wrote this about. You know, I was reading some of the notes on the guy. He'd been put in mental institutions on bipolar meds. He'd been through a lot of different stuff, man. And he took this path of escape. But it's a fantastic song, man. I mean, it really is. And it's the arrangement, like I said, compared to the lyrics, which we've had on a couple of these, is quite well done. You got to pay attention. Next up, we have Hebrews 11:40. Since God had provided something better for us, that apart from us, they should not be made perfect. In live performances, John has expressed he wrote this song while watching a film by Mario Bava, an Italian horror director known for his gory contributions to the development of the slasher genre in the 50s and 60s. So after reading that, I have no idea how he ties this back to Hebrews 11, but I'm sure John does. That one was a quick one. A little more, I mean, not totally, but a little bit more like the first song, 1 Samuel 15:23, arrangement-wise, but still a little different than that. Basically painting a picture of difficulty, but he believes he's going to be restored, if not by faith, by the sword. So a little vague lyrically, I guess showing you that no matter what, you're going to be okay. That's what he believes one way or the other. So I don't know, man. I don't know. It's this one's a little more puzzling, but still really liked it. And it is actually, this would make the 5th New Testament song. So I misspoke earlier when I said there were only 4. I'm going to rewind it way back to the first book of the Bible again. We got Genesis 30, verse 3. It says, "Then she said, 'Here's my servant Bilhah. Go into her so that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her.'" So this is a story of Rachel, Bilhah, Jacob. Rachel couldn't have a baby, so she told Jacob to go have a baby with Bilhah. According to Darnell, the song is based off the relationship between Rachel and Bilhah, which is the most beautiful love story he's ever read. Interesting take. All right, Genesis 30, verse 3. It's an interesting way to look at this as like a great love story because Bilhah was a slave, yet her and Rachel were close. So you kind of have to take it, and John talks about this from the stage. I read in this thing he said about it in 2013. Basically, you just got to take it at face value. She does this for her. She does this for Rachel, and everyone's okay with it. You know, it's a different time and a different place, obviously, but piano ballad, right? The piano becomes the main instrument. Now, the drumming and stuff comes in there a little bit, like 1 Samuel 15:23, but basically a piano that just draws you in. So he writes it like a love story, right? It sounds like a love story if you're not really listening to the lyrics. I mean, the lyrics aren't unlove story, but you know what I mean. But good way to finish off the first half of this album. Now, we go to Romans 10, verse 9. "Because if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved." That believe in your heart is an important thing. I see a lot of churches try to get people to make the confession, the sinner's prayer, which, by the way, if you're saved by the sinner's prayer, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of evidence in Romans that that's fine, but it's not in the Bible, right? So don't just take that as I said the prayer and now I'm saved, because it doesn't work that way. That's a whole nother story. But I think Romans is the most theological, complex, and important book in the Bible. But I mean, you could argue a lot of those. I spent an entire year teaching this week by week to my men's group. In a 2009 interview with Pitchfork, John said the song was inspired by a day he spent brutally hungover in a hotel room in Colorado and ended up flipping through the hotel Bible. In the same interview, he describes the song as being a, quote, a pair with Philippians 30, 20, 21, which he says is about accepting someone's suicide. Romans describes someone in chronic psychological pain, relying on their faith to get through each day. I don't understand as much as psychologically, but I've been there in my life as far as physically pushing into this. So great take. All right, Romans 10:9. He's going through the difficult times that he's having, right? He's sharing it. And he believes God's going to save him someday. So he gets the meds for a psychological condition. He's not going to take them because he believes God's going to save him and help him out. But he's going to keep them just in case, right? I think that's what a lot of people do when they're pushing into God. And I do that a lot too. It's not any judgment. Like, I get it. I think it was very smart the way he phrased this and did the song. There's a lot in this song, even though it's only, 2 minutes, 44 seconds. There's a lot theologically in this song that I won't dive into. But once again, kind of like an airy, cheery tone to it, even though it's got a deep underlying tone or theme to it. So I enjoyed it. We're going to keep right in the New Testament with 1 John 4:16. So we've come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. So yeah, I mean, I have no idea what this one's going to be about. No background on this one. Wow, this one's a powerful one, right? He's dying, and he's talking, I would assume, to his wife. I see other people say it could be a friend. It's his wife. I'm 99.9% sure. He's dying. When someone leads this beast in on his chain, that could be Satan, but in this case, it's death. But I know you're thinking of me because it's just about to rain, so I won't be afraid of anything ever again. They probably met when it was raining, right? And in a cell that holds my body back, the door swings wide, and so he's in bed, right? He's on his deathbed. So his body is probably the cell, actually. And I feel like someone's lost child as the guards lead me outside. So he's scared of dying, right? As the clouds are gathering, it's just to point the way to an afternoon I spent with you when it rained all day. So he's getting a little bit of a relief, just a little bit of peace, knowing that maybe his wife will think of him always when it rains. This song's fantastic, right? Just the piano and the strings, really well done. Like, this song's fantastic. All right, next up we have Matthew 25:21. His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I'll set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master." John said, straight autobiographical song. It's about the time that it's hard to talk about. It's about the time that I called my wife from tour, and she had gone to be with her mom, and she said, "We're thinking it could come any minute." I was on tour, and I couldn't go say goodbye, so I had to cancel a show in Northampton, Massachusetts, and flew home, drove in, and stayed in that environment where someone's about to leave their body at a very young age. I was there for about 24 hours, and then I turned around and went back to tour and stepped from a cab onto stage. It was really disorienting in a heavy, heavy way. So yeah, that's for her. So his mother-in-law while dying, right? Wow, heavy stuff. Matthew 25:21. What a devastating song, right? Second song in a row about death, but as he said, autobiographical. His mother-in-law is dying of cancer. So he rushes there to be with her and kind of gives the idea of how he gets there. But then he's not quite ready. As then I came to your bedside, as it turns out I'm not ready. So you're speaking through a thick haze. You said hello to me. We all stood around happy to hear you speak. The last of something bright burning, still burning beyond the cancer and the chemotherapy. And then the last chorus is devastating. So he talks about, he went for 24 hours. He had to go back on tour, but she hadn't passed away yet. And you were a presence full of light upon this earth. And I'm a witness to your life and to what it's worth, and to its worth, which is kind of what God tells you in the Bible, right? That's actually what the legacy you're supposed to leave behind, not money and all that good stuff. It's 3 days later when I get the call, and there's nobody around to break my fall. So he's devastated, but no one around, none of his loved ones around, right? So just fantastic. And he draws this song out. It's almost 6 minutes long. Just him and the acoustic is perfectly done. All right, got 3 songs left. We got Deuteronomy 2:10. The Emim formerly lived there, a great and many, and tall as the Anakim. I have no idea what this song is going to be about. All right, Deuteronomy 2:10. So basically, he's just talking about extinct animals and kind of runs through 3 different extinct animals, just like the Emins. They ended up becoming extinct, and so did these animals. That's kind of the story behind this story. Next up, we have Isaiah 45:23. By myself I have sworn, for my mouth has gone out in righteousness, a word that shall not return. To me every knee shall bow, every tongue shall swear allegiance. All right, Isaiah 45:23. This guy's on his deathbed, right? He's on his deathbed, man. And he's saying that, and I won't get better, but someday I'll be free because I'm not this body that imprisons me. So those of us who have physical maladies, like, I can really identify with this. And he's reading the magazine someone brought, hold them till my failing eyes, until my hands get hot. And when the nurse comes in to change my sheets and clothes, the pain begins to travel, dancing as it goes. And he repeats the chorus again. He says, if my prayer goes unanswered, that's all right. If my path fills with darkness and there's no sign of light, let me praise you for the good times. Let me hold your banner high until the hills are flattened and the rivers all run dry. So even if he doesn't go to heaven, which I'm going to say he's going to go to heaven, you can't ever tell, but because, of just the attitude he has towards it, he's still going to thank God for all the good times. But this song was fantastic. This song's a devastating song again, man. Not that John ever brings the light stuff, but wow. All right, now we're to the last song, Ezekiel 7 and the permanent efficacy of grace. In this chapter, Ezekiel announces that judgment on Israel is near. The song's about a crime syndicate enforcer torturing someone to death in a desert in the American Southwest. John says, as an American, I spend a lot of time thinking about people torturing one another to death in the desert. So that's what this song is about. I don't know why as an American you spend a lot of time thinking that, but let's go. All right, Ezekiel 7 and the permanent efficacy of grace. So interesting song just with the piano in there mainly and building the drama with that little heartbeat in the background. You can really hear it obviously on the fade out on the coda, but drive till the rain stops, keep driving because you got this person locked up, right? Got this person tied, arms tied behind him. We were together all day. So building a bond, knowing he's going to have to go out and torture this person. So an interesting song to end on, which is going to bring me to my favorite tracks. And, this is not an album you're going to listen to and go like, that track's really catchy. I mean, there are a couple of them that I mentioned, but like that you're just going to go, I need to immediately respin that. So it's going to be more almost if the lyrics speak to you as much as anything. I mean, some of the arrangements, but I've got a lot of them. So honorable mention, going to go with 1 Samuel 15:23, the first song, and Genesis 30, verse 3. I mean, you're not going to remember these songs, right? Because they're a little bit hard to remember because they're just scriptures. But Psalms 42 is my fave. Psalms 42, Genesis 3:23, 1 John 4:16, Matthew 25:21, and Isaiah 45:23. So now we come to my overall score for this album. Once again, hitting on what I said about the songs. It's kind of weird, right? Because it's kind of hard to grade an album like this where it's going to take several listens to let this kind of sink in. I'm going to do a quiet listen to this kind of at night not with all the lights up, like just a kind of a chill where I'm not looking at the lyrics and kind of let it swim over me. But John is just one of the most underrated songwriters of this century. He's just fantastic. He's brilliant, man. He just really is. And to be able to take this and weave this stuff out. So I'm going to be in an 8.0. Like, I don't know how much I'm going to re-listen to this album. I am going to re-listen to it a little bit, but it's just, he can just speak to you, man, in a way that most songwriters just cannot, especially nowadays. But great choice by Caitlin. Let me know what you guys think of this album below, where you think it stands in the Mountain Goats discography, and just what your faves are, what your opinion is. I'm very curious to hear that. All right, guys, until next time, I will see you.